With Commissioner Cause out this time, I'll make a motion for Jeff Culberson act as temporary chair for today's meeting.
Second. Yep.
And who starts the call today? Usually Vicki would have it on our list. I'll just say aye.
Aye.
I guess so.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please observe a moment of silence. Thank you and welcome to the commission meeting, those present and online. Start out with the roll call. I don't know who she started with last week. Was it her? I think it was. So start with Doug Smith, Mike Stephen.
Here.
Mike Smith.
Here.
Jeff Culberson is here, and Vicki's not online or anything, right?
No.
Move on to public comment. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Commissioner, I do not believe we have anybody.
No, we don't, Jeff.
Okay, and nobody in the audience would like to speak. So move on to administrative business. Mr. Lawford, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to, because we've had a couple of questions about road striping, I just wanted to touch base real quick that as the county does road projects, we do not have our own road striping machine. We contract that out. It's proven over the years that that is the better way to do it. So they come out a few times a year and stripe the roads that we've been working on. So there is a gap between the time the work is done and the striping is put down. We try to make that as small as possible, especially on high traffic roads, but there is going to be some gap. I talked to the public works director this morning, and he said that the 21st, I believe, the stripers will be here working on the last set of roads that we completed to get them done. But that contractor obviously is busy and has weather, and we tried to have them out here after every road we completed it. We just couldn't do it. So that's just a kind of a heads up in case any of you will receive those questions.
And I've noticed, a lot of things that we've had to cut for budget cuts over the years usually is not a good thing. I think road striping is actually one of the better things that since we've contracted it out, it seems like we get more of the roads done than we did when we did them ourselves. Then I think the important part about getting them striped, though, pretty soon after they get new chip and seal, especially if you use the red rock, the hay dye, at night, it's really hard to see where you're at without the stripes on the road. So
when we first started that in 2007, they did it cheaper than we could buy the paint.
Yeah,
it was better paint, and their paint was coming from local correction facilities.
It seems like it lasts longer than when we did it too.
Cities have also gone that way for the same reason that Mark and Jeff.
And we also share the liability.
Yeah.
Good point. Mr. Van Paris, did you have anything for Mr.
No, Commissioner.
Any of the commissioners have anything? Mr. Stephen?
Yes, I want to address this with the county councilor. Talking about statutorily required responsibilities in terms of budgeting and the role of the county commissioners as for elected officials. There's statutorily required funding that is mandated, but can you kind of delineate that, the difference between the statutorily required funding and the discretionary funding that the county commissioners have authority over in terms of elected officials?
Well, Commissioner, the elected officials' officers are created by statute. There's no specific statute that sets out a funding formula for them. There's significant case law that indicates that it is a requirement of the Board of County Commissioners to adequately fund the offices of the elected officials of the county. As to what constitutes adequate funding is something that's going to be worked out annually. It's partially at the discretion of the elected official and partially at the discretion of the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners, by statute, has the responsibility and duty of implementing a budget for the county and the taxes that result from that. The best I can tell you is there's no hard-written formula to apply to this. It's a matter of judgment. It's a matter of discretion. It changes over time as the needs of those various offices change over time. So there's a balance that is required. You are required to adequately fund the departments of the elected officials. The elected officials are responsible to discharge their statutory duties and to maintain fiscal responsibility. And that's about the best I can come or tell you. There is no hard, fast mathematical formula that is to be applied.
They do not necessarily have a open purse, so to speak, that a elected official can just determine their own budget and have no oversight or no accountability to the Board of County Commissioners, correct? It's not just an open purse. You just don't decide, I want X amount, and there's no limit.
Well, I'm not certain what you mean by no limit. It is the responsibility of an elected official to carry out their duties and to request adequate funding to do so. Funding in excess of that probably would be inappropriate if it lies outside of the discharge of their statutory duties.
So our responsibility is to fund what is the statutory duties of the office, but in terms of discretionary spending above that statutory duties, that is within the purview of the discretion of the county commissioners.
Commissioner, as I said, again, there's no absolute division between those two boundaries. Quite frankly, the budget laws of the state of Kansas require that elected officials be responsible in their requests and that the Board of County Commissioners weigh those requests and adequately fund the office.
I could weigh in on one thing too, Mike. That's all right. I see where you're going with, Commissioner. I think what David was saying too was, and it's key, and one of the things this board has tried to do is make sure we're given enough information that we can make good decisions. I think this year we really got a little deeper than we've been involved, which I was always glad to see. But again, the bottom line, the county commissioners held accountable, and if they see something in that budget that they're not comfortable with, the majority of it, we should not put that in the budget. I mean, they've got rules and things. They could go to challenge that, but I'm hoping we never have to come to that because elected officials that I see in office right now are very responsible for their budgets. But every year I think we're going to have this conversation. And I think it shows more now because of all the tightness and the budgets are getting, especially in the county with the cost of everything that we have to do, especially roads and bridges, that we're just looking for any dollar. But I think Mark did a good job on trying to make sure that we got in where we needed to be for the money. But on Mike's point, it is always a good reminder to know that the county commissioners do set the budget for everyone.
Commissioner Stephen, I would tell you this. The acid test would be if a budget request was made by an elected official, it's denied by the Board of County Commissioners, and the elected officials takes the county commissioners to court. And there are numerous examples of that in Kansas case law. The courts do not look forward to those types of cases because what you're really doing at that point is surrendering the budgetary decision-making process over to the judiciary, and they do not want to be put in that position. And it's best for the citizens that those types of litigation expenses be avoided. So again, best I can tell you, it's a balancing act. You're responsible for setting a county budget and the resulting taxes that flow out of that budget. The elected officials are responsible to discharge their statutory duties, but do so in a fiscally responsible manner.
And I would concur with that. We do not want to get into any kind of, to me, I look at it like it's a family sitting around a table and trying to come up with your yearly budget. I think that's the spirit we should be operating in, not where it would go to a litigation type approach.
But you know, Mike, we're hoping that as a family, all of us, you'll run away from home. I'm only kidding.
Mr. Stephen, I'd sum it up. To use your family dinner analogy, pretend it's Thanksgiving. Let's not fight over the turkey.
Let's just hope we have a turkey.
So the language that you just quoted in the statute would be the same as the school district's adequate funding?
Is that kind of the same term when they determined that the school districts all went to court for adequate funding?
Mr. Smith, I'll tell you what, I'm going to step away from that question. I'm not well versed in school district law, and it's a specific field, and I don't want to touch that.
But, adequate funding is adequate funding, but who determines it?
It can be determined at various levels. It can be determined in the department head's discretion, the elected official's discretion. It can be determined by your decision, and if there's dispute, then it can be determined at the judicial level.
Okay. Well, I thought Commissioner Stevens was heading with outside agencies when he talked about what we were statutorial or contractual obligated to fund.
And that's a different issue, but that's a good issue.
Yeah.
I think it's an easy issue. We're not required by law. We don't have a contract. We don't fund it. Easy.
Commissioner Smith, with respect to that, there are certain things that the Board of County Commissioners is required to fund, and they're generally set out in statutes.
Mm-hmm.
Things outside of that, if you believe it's in the public interest, you may fund. It's not mandated, and at that point, you really get into the issue of are you using tax funds to benefit a specific group rather than the general public.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I just don't like to be the one to choose people's charities.
Yep, good point.
I don't have
I don't want people choosing my charities I donate to. I don't want to choose anybody else's.
Do you have anything else, Commissioner Stevens?
That's all I have.
No.
We'll move on to consent agenda. Does anything need to be removed from the consent agenda?
No, sir.
If not, I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Voting, Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Stevens?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
I vote aye. Formal board actions. Presentation and discussion items. 222nd Street and Kansas Avenue speed study review. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Bill.
Morning, Commissioners. Today, for your review, I'm going to present the speed study that you guys directed staff to engage Olson and Associates in completing. This study was completed on 222nd Street and Kansas Avenue, which is located on the west and north sides of the Tonganoxie Industrial Park. The speed study included an evaluation of the current speeds of the roadway, line of sight, and characteristics of the road. The 222nd Street portion of the roadway is currently posted at 35 miles an hour. However, the 85th percentile speed did come back at 55 miles per hour on that roadway. In the line of sight evaluations of 222nd Street, it did meet the line of sight requirements for a 55 mile an hour speed limit. But in the recommendations and summaries of the report, because it's not a through road and it does access an industrial park, it was the engineer's opinion of the study to have it remain at 35 miles an hour. But like we had previously discussed in discussions about speed limits, sometimes you will find that speed limits as a result of a study are increased. And in this case on 222nd Street, it met all of the parameters for a 55 mile an hour speed limit, and then just simply went to an engineering judgment call of whether or not that roadway is intended for that type of traffic. But it did meet all the other standards for a 55 mile an hour road.
I have a question on that. When I read page 4, I see the Olson recommendation of placing additional signage on 222nd Street. I do not see a recommendation that the speed be raised to 55 mile an hour.
That is correct. So the recommendation was to remain a 35 mile an hour roadway based upon the road characteristics and the usage of the road being primarily residential to the north and the industrial park to the east, and not a through highway. So based upon engineering opinion, they recommended the speed limit remaining of 35 miles an hour for 222nd Street, but it did meet all of the parameters from a line of sight and 85th percentile. In the summary, it highlights the lack of enforcement of the current speed limit as one of the contributing factors, as well as the need for maybe some outreach to those folks working at the industrial park.
Does the city law enforcement patrol that and enforce it?
Not that I'm aware of, but I did speak briefly with the city administrator of Tonganoxie and let him know about the study, the ongoing study, and would provide them a copy of our report after it was presented to the Board of County Commissioners.
They're willing to pay half the bill on it?
It did not sound like it.
Okay, are we going to have to redo this study if we take this road back to gravel?
Well, currently the gravel road, which we can speak to on Kansas Avenue, had an 85th percentile speed of 40 miles per hour. It did not meet some of the line of sight requirements for a 40-mile-an-hour roadway because of the vegetation that was growing along the roadway. If the vegetation was mowed back to the right-of-way all the way, pushing some of the trees back, it would meet the requirements of a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. Their recommendation was that we posted at 35 because the vegetation is going to grow in our current maintenance cycles, and it met the line of sight for a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. So I would assume that with both roads being 35, we would probably be able to leave 222nd at 35 miles an hour if it were gravel as well.
I mean, there's no plan. Nobody's got any plans to upgrade the road, right?
I think we're still working on it.
Well,
I mean, I think that's the active discussion is to try to see if we can get the grant
It's
down the
currently
road,
not,
you know.
as you guys are all aware, there has been extensive discussions regarding the roadways around that industrial park, and but it is not currently in our 5-year CIP as a project that has been identified or has any type of design that is going to be engaged in it at this time.
so basically, both large businesses will be open before anything's ever done to the road.
Yes, so it is my understanding that there will be another industrial complex built on the northwest corner of the property, and Unilock is also breaking ground in the next several months on a manufacturing facility where they had their storage yard. So there'll be 2 additional manufacturing facilities in the industrial park, from my understanding, by the end of next year.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to instruct staff to take the necessary steps to implement the recommendations of the speed study to include limitation of speed at 35 mile an hour and additional signage as specified.
Second.
For discussion.
Discussion?
What was the cost of this?
We have not received the invoice, but the estimated cost was $7,500.
Okay. That's a few loads of rock we can't pay for now. So.
And once
I think it's a waste of money, but whatever.
Well, we could have just put the signs up, but we were required to go through this process of going through a traffic
Well,
study.
but these are roads we didn't meet with the city of Tonganoxie to do a joint effort on this. I mean, half the road's theirs.
I agree with you, but the issue here is the speed limit, and that's what we've gone through the process is to try to figure out how to get the speed limit down. When we get into the issue, there's a lot of other issues dealing with the road that need to be resolved.
Well, once again, it's hindsight, but the new resolution we put in place that when a city annexes a property, they annex the entire right-of-way.
Yeah.
And that's
We wouldn't
going
have this
forward.
problem right
Right.
now.
I agree.
So
with
from now on, we won't see this kind of problem. That's one good thing.
I would also note that I'd be working with Mr. Van Paris and Ms. Brown regarding the placement of that stop sign, because that stop sign that's been recommended as a part of the study is located within the city of Tonganoxie, because it would be at the northeast corner of the intersection of Kansas Avenue and 222nd Street, and that is actually within the city limits of the city of Tonganoxie. So they would need to be included in that decision to place that sign and, I guess, approve of that sign being placed within the city limits.
They'd have to maintain it.
And I assume, and my motion is to instruct staff to take the necessary steps. I assume part of those steps would be to follow the education, to send a letter to the sheriff or communicate with the office about enforcement and communicate with Tonganoxie about their responsibilities as well. I mean, I'm assuming that's part of this.
I think that the direction is, as contemplated in the motion, is for staff to move forward with implementing the suggestions provided for in the engineering study by Olson. And as part of that, we would have to look at whose right of way it is and where the signs go and enforcement. Obviously, we do not control any of the enforcement on Tonganoxie's side of this. And we can't mandate that they put signs up if they don't want to. I think the cost of a sign is fairly minimal, especially once we get the crew out there doing our own signs. So we can probably work with them on that aspect.
You know, I had mixed feelings on this until I got the report, but we paid somebody, $7,500 to come back and give us a report, and that's the reason I'm following it, because I had mixed thoughts on this.
But your motion includes reaching out to the city of Tonga.
Yeah, the motion is to instruct staff to take the necessary steps to implement the recommendations of the speed study to include limitation of speed at 35 mile an hour and additional signage as specified.
Okay. That's adequate.
Which would have to include.
Yeah.
Right from the city. Voting?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye. Motion carries 3-1. Next item on the agenda is 158th Street SWIP closure review.
Commissioners, included in your packet is a number of photos from the last SWIP inspection review that was completed by Olson and Associates on behalf of Leavenworth County as our contracted engineering service. As you can see in those photos, there are a lot of bare spots out there on the roadway. We did reach out to KDHE as a part of this process to try to better understand their 70% requirement and verify that they were referring to density, not general site coverage. And so the issue at hand is the contractor to date is unwilling to do further action in regards to seeding. The county would need to engage a seeding contractor to go out and scarify or break the crust of the dirt and work on the ground a little bit. A lot of the bare spots that we currently are seeing are along the edge of the roadway, and they are hard panned and would need to be worked prior to having seeding placed. The discussions with KDHE and with our contracted engineering consultants have aligned with the fact that it is a 70% density requirement. So that means 70% density in all areas. It does not constitute a 70% overall vegetation growth, where you have 70% with 100% coverage and 30% that's bare throughout the project. I think one of the issues at hand that we have here is that a good portion of this roadway is located in people's front yards, and we have left a lot of bare spots within those front yards that need to be addressed. As a property owner and a taxpayer, I would expect when a project to be completed, it to be returned to near the condition that it was prior to the project as far as vegetation goes. And that aligns with the KDHE stormwater pollution and prevention plan requirements. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, but I think today what I would need from the commissioners is direction to engage a contractor to complete these services while we're within the KDOT seeding window and move forward.
So the permit's still open?
Yes, we are still doing
Still
bi-weekly.
So like today, you have to make a report?
Well, at the conclusion of the project, from a construction standpoint, when you're establishing vegetation under current standards, we only have to review it every 2 weeks. So during the construction, every rain event has to have an inspection, but now that we're post-construction and we're trying to establish vegetation, we can do bi-weekly inspections at a cost of approximately $800.
So every 2 weeks we're spending $800 on inspections?
Yes. That's why it's imperative that when these projects are concluded and you go through a seeding window, that you close these projects out and don't draw them out further.
So $1,600 a month we've been paying for inspections.
Approximately, yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
When did that start? What was the date?
That started at the conclusion. At the conclusion of the project, we paid for them all throughout the project, but that was part of the contract.
What was the end of the I can't remember the exact date of the project.
The project closed, I would say, approximately last October, maybe. I'd have to go back and look. It could have been earlier. It could have been September of last year, but we've been paying for this for
Man, we could have paid for some traffic studies, huh?
Or some seed.
Lots of seed.
Lots of seed. That's what we could have paid for, is lots of seed.
It's terrible.
But at this point, the matter of whether or not the responsibility of the project contractor is going to be left up to Mr. Van Paris. But from a staff perspective, we do need to engage, and it will be above the contracted cost. More or less, this is a request for a change order because we are holding the retainage of $96,000 from the contract for the seeding that we would be spending from, but dependent upon the outcome of any future litigation of the matter, that money could be spent on that as well. So this is more or less a request for additional funds or to direct staff to use some of the existing funds left over.
I think we need to get rid of this permit.
Yeah, Commissioners, I think that the issue here is that we have to get grass established.
Yeah,
we're now getting close to that window where we can plant. Obviously, in the spring, the attempts did not hold. As you can see by the pictures, there's clearly areas of issue. So what we're asking is for your basically authority to go out and engage a contractor on the county's behalf to establish the grass as needed. We're not sure what the cost is going to be yet until we get the quotes or bids, but it has to be done. Our intention is that we would use project funds that are still available through the retainage to do that. As far as at the end of the day, the contractor has notified us that they do not intend to go back out and do this. It was part of their contract, but they've notified us they do not intend to go back out and complete it. So therefore, it falls to us because the SWIP is in the county's name.
And the contractor is not going to go out and do this because they believe their responsibilities have been substantially met. Why would they not be willing to go back out and do it?
I wouldn't go into that.
I wouldn't delve into speculating as to their state of mind, Commissioners, though I would urge you to follow Mr. Knoll's course of action, if only to fulfill our duty to mitigate our damages. We need to, one, close out that permit, and secondly, it'd be advisable for the county to take affirmative actions to reduce the damage through erosion, the damage that it caused through the appearance of these people's front yards. Reseed that area and hire a contractor to do so, and to, as Mr. Lawfrey and Mr. Knoll both suggested, do so now rather than later.
Yeah, I agree.
But the letter states that they simply are not going to engage further with the county on this issue.
They have made legal representations that they believe the county is in breach of the agreement of the contract by not paying the retainage out, which makes it very clear to me, in my mind, that they do not intend to undertake any further work on the project.
Does this got to go out for a bid, or can you just do an RFQ?
We wouldn't probably, it'd be we'll just bid it. We'll try to find several contractors who are willing to give us a price. We'll have some sort of seed identified as part of the bid and what our requirements will be.
Running out of time.
Running out of time real quick.
So I think we need to get this done. I move that we authorize Public Works to get a request or a quote from a contractor to seed 158th Street.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Is this going to be taken out of the retainage, or is this going to be county funds used?
It'd be initially, I would intend to take it out of the retainage, but dependent upon the result of what I'm directed by the county councilor and future decisions made, that could come out of the sales tax fund if necessary.
Commissioners, we have good faith estimated cost for this. It is not insubstantial, but we believe it is within the amount of retainage that is being held. We're hopeful we will be able to fulfill the SWIP requirements within the boundaries of the retainage.
I think we should make one final attempt to reach out to this contractor.
The contractor, as I said, has initiated litigation against the county.
But you can reach out to the attorney, right?
Yeah, so we're done.
Well, I mean, but our attorney can reach out to their attorney.
That has been done, Commissioner, several occasions.
Well, I mean, I'm always wanting to do that before we move towards the next step.
I would state that this has been an ongoing issue for well over 7 months. So these discussions are completely played out at this point. From my estimation, there's no middle ground. I mean, the county's been very clear of their position, and the contractor has now made it very clear of their position. But we have had correspondence ongoing last fall during the seeding window, again in the spring during the seeding window, and here through the summer during the seeding, as this seeding window comes.
Are we on solid legal ground to use retainage for this purpose?
I believe so, Commissioner.
Any more discussion? Voting?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I vote aye. Thanks,
Thank you.
Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Additional public comment. We didn't have anybody signed up that I know of. So, discussion items. Start with Commissioner Smith.
I got Bayshore City Council tonight. Attended the fundraiser chamber there Saturday night. Got to watch Commissioner Mike Smith perform.
Don't go any further, Doug.
No, there was some really good.
Yeah.
I was really impressed. There was some local talent that was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Say
a shocker
karaoke.
to know these people and you didn't know they had that kind of talent.
Yeah.
No, it was-
Did you come as Elvis?
No, there was Mr.
Tom Young.
Tom Young did Elvis. And
Did very well.
Karaoke, did the singing, actual singing. I thought he was lip syncing.
Yeah.
He was that good.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well,
So there was a lot of that.
well, so who did you come as, Commissioner Smith?
There's a song called God Bless Texas, but I changed it to God Bless Kansas by Little Texas, a country song. And I paired up with Mayor Wilson, and he did a rap song. So it was a little bit of combination. It was a fun time, and as Doug saying,
Mayor Wilson helped me out a lot.
yeah, Mayor Wilson helped me out quite a bit.
Did he have the rhythm?
Oh yeah,
And you have the blues.
But the thing about it is, it's money for the chamber for a high school senior scholarship, and it was a good time had by all. I was a little concerned at one time. Todd did a fire act, and I did look for the exits when he was doing the
I looked
fire.
for the sprinklers.
Anyway,
Good thing it was there. If he had held it at one place that had sprinklers, we would have all got wet.
anyway, sorry, Doug.
No, that's all I had, Commissioner.
Well, we were going to go tour the landfill today, and I guess that's being
You heard back?
rescheduled to the 30th.
Have you heard back?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a little wet. Landfill's probably
Does it
muddy.
rain every time you guys schedule
It
this?
It's like the second time. We're going to the Farm Bureau dinner tonight.
Yep.
Oh,
So,
is anybody going to Jake LaTurner's coffee today?
Well,
it's over at 10:30.
Half hour ago.
Started at 9, but he's
Yeah.
there until 10:30, isn't
well, if we get out in time, depends how much we talk.
he? Yeah.
Where's he at?
Down at the harbor.
The Harbor Lights.
Lights.
Yeah.
Maybe we should.
I was going to run down there if he's
Yeah.
still there.
Okay. Well, if I don't, I'll give you a list of questions.
Okay. Is that all you have, Mike?
That's all I have.
Just a couple of things. Doug brought up the lip sync competition. A lot of good folks out there. Monday, I had the interview with Lansing Government Channel. A lot of hard questions, but a lot of questions that need to be asked. And of course, we go back to local Antrim and other things that happen out here in the county. A lot of tough questions, but if you want to view that, you can view it on the Lansing site. And I see, if this is still on, Mark, the City Hall selfie on the 15th at 9:55. Is that correct? Okay.
What is that?
Mid-America Regional Council.
Something Mid-America Regional Council message.
Every year, yeah.
Are you going to be in the selfie?
What day of the week is that?
I think it's a Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have anything else coming.
Okay. I had Easton City Hall meeting Monday night. They were going over their plan to dig up everybody's water mains because of the regulation that came out about the lead and copper water issued by the state. And then also had Leavenworth City meeting last night. I met with a couple of the city commissioners, too, to talk about getting LAVTR letters from the city. They said they'd be more than happy to do that.
Yep.
And then I plan on going down and talking to Jake LaTurner about several issues, including pilot checks from the feds, LAVTR from the state, 152 bridge, and House Bill 79 about income tax versus property tax.
Jeff, I have one add on that. I'll be having lunch with Tim Vandal, city manager out in Lansing, and one of the things I'm going to be requesting that they bring forward is the same thing about supporting that. I'm sorry I forgot to bring that
Yeah.
up.
When are you going to meet with him?
Friday.
Friday? Okay. Because I got something, too, I want you to talk to him about.
Okay.
Get it to you.
Absolutely.
That's all I've got.
Yeah, if everybody would get together and band together and support this, I think we're gaining traction.
It's way better than it was 4 or 5 years
I
ago.
would have never thought that we'd have to fight so hard to get the legislature to follow the law.
It's already on the book.
It's already on the books.
It's something that they're looking for that's already
And if they would pay that, there's no doubt in my mind, we would be revenue neutral because that's about the amount of money that we're offset right now.
Yep.
So,
It's
folks, again, we need your help. But we've tried as elected officials, talk to the people running for office.
And it's an election year next year. So they got a chance to give it back next session and look like rock stars.
That's exactly. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
voting.
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thanks.